All right, joining us right now is Washington Times columnist Tim Constantine. Tim, it's good to have you with us.
Hi there. Thanks for having me back.
No problem. All right, let's take a look at Jeb Bush and his yet-to-be candidacy. The New York Times on Jeb Bush talking about the fact that he hasn't officially announced yet. However, lawyers say the former governor is stretching the limits of election law by holding out on declaring his official candidacy this long. Has he passed the legal threshold, or shouldn't I say, hasn't he passed some sort of threshold to be considered a candidate? He said it himself, even if it was an error.
Yeah, he did slip once and say it, but I think there are some specific criteria that have to be crossed. I think in general they've avoided that, but you know, I know, and frankly Jeb Bush knows that he intends to run for the presidency in 2016.
Yeah, so at this point, I mean, you could make the argument that him not declaring is simply so he can take advantage of the situation and may be a little bit disingenuous.
Well, I don't know how much advantage you take. I mean, there's certain finance laws and others, but there's strategy to anything you do. You could make the claim. There are others who have taken their time. There are some who intend to announce later this month. So everybody has their own timing. That doesn't disqualify them from traveling to New Hampshire or Iowa or anywhere else and testing the waters, because they've acknowledged they can do that. But you know, if Jeb wants to wait and thinks there's a strategic advantage, God bless him.
All right, well, you know, he is abiding by the law, so let's be clear about that. We'll see how long he can hold out. We do know other candidates are announcing almost every single day. I think Rick Perry's coming out. We got Bobby Jindal on the horizon and much more to come here. Do you think, Tim, though, we're looking at this first debate here. There's only going to be 10 candidates on the stage. A lot of the candidates are locked up at about 10% in the polls right now, but is this essentially going to be the first elimination round? If you don't make it on that stage at 10 in Iowa, you then really don't have much of a shot because nobody's going to be talking about you during the Iowa caucuses, and if you lose the Iowa caucuses or don't place well, you're pretty much done, right?
Yeah, you know, I talked to Carly Fiorina about this past week, and she does not currently place in the top 10 in those polls. But she had a great approach to it. What she said was, look, you tell me what the rules are, and I'll play by the rules. If that's the goal, if that's the standard, then by that time frame, that's where I'm going to be, in the top 10, and we'll work from there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing, is Fox News, in the case of that particular thing, has the ability, has the right to make their own rules. But as long as they tell everybody in advance, they're all playing in the same game.
Yeah, and I don't know if the GOP wants Fox News making up their own rules for them. That might cause them some problems, but we can talk about that at a different time. But I also want to talk about your latest column, Tim, and it's going to get a little awkward because we got to talk about the birds and the bees a little bit. You're writing about a puberty class, quote, puberty class here your son's school was going to have. Now, in Minnesota, a middle school class was taken to an adult sex shop as part of their sex education class. What is going on here?
Yeah, the big picture for me, the school sent home a note that said, you know, unless you opt out, your child will be put in this puberty class. And we opted out. And there was a big discussion among parents, but it was like 3 days later when that story came out of Minnesota, where the sex ed teacher took 13, 14-year-old kids to a sex shop for sex education. And I thought that's the exact reason. And I think it speaks to a bigger issue, and that is, in today's world, we tend to cede responsibility for important things to other people. In the United States, we were built on taking responsibility and accountability. For whatever reason in our society, we like to put that off now. And I'm thinking, at the very least, as a dad or as a mom, you probably ought to be the one that sits down and talks about the birds and the bees with your kid, not a total stranger.
Yeah.
Even if it's not at the Smitten Kitten like it was in Minnesota.
That was the name of the shop, the Smitten Kitten?
That was the name of the sex shop.
Oh,
Junior's going to the Smitten Kitten.
Where
else could you take a kid to a porn shop and not get arrested?
Oh boy, you know, you gotta, somebody, the parent's probably the best person to do it, but you gotta educate these kids somehow nowadays. So much stuff out there on the internet. Gotta be proactive about it. Tim Constantine's gonna stick around with us. We're gonna talk a little bit more about a lot of stuff going on in Washington, D.C. coming up right after this.